Alright, welcome back everyone. This is Explainer of Mysteries here. And today I decided we're going to talk about the Decans of Gemini. Those decans being the Decan of Mercury, the Decan of Venus, and the Decan of Uranus and Saturn. So, Gemini being an air sign, and air can be a bit confusing because air has to do with thoughts, air has to do with ideas. And so to get into this, we have to understand the planet of Mercury. Now, the planet of Mercury has to do with all things communication. Mercury also has to do with speed. So, for instance, someone that may have a lot of Gemini in their chart, a lot of Gemini, however you want to pronounce it, that's a bit of a Gemini deception in of itself. Pronunciation, because certain words, depending on how it's pronounced, can have a totally different meaning, or can also carry a different meaning both in the literal, colloquial sense and also in a deeper, more esoteric sense. Now, with the sign of Gemini, to understand Mercury, we need to look at the correspondences of the element of air. Now, while Mercury is not completely air, Mercury is not air, and air is not Mercury, although Mercury has a lot to do with the element of air, more so than the other planets. So, all the air signs are going to have a mercurial element to them, although Gemini and Aquarius are the most. Now, to look at Mercury, we need to look at the concept of speed, movement. Now, someone with a strong Gemini placement or with a lot of Gemini in their chart, such as they have a stellium and Gemini, might be a very fast talker. They may be argumentative as well. They may sort of give you information in a way that is quick and incomplete and therefore can be misleading, because Gemini, and by extension those with a strong Mercury or air presence in their chart, may feel the need to speak quickly before you have the chance to cut them off or lose interest. And so as a result, this can be very misleading because they just don't have the time to give you all the information that you need to fully understand something. And or they want to tell you before you have a chance to cut them off and shout over them, such as when having ego arguments. Now, I can be pretty guilty of this myself, and I have been in the past, as I have Mars in Gemini, and, it's aspecting some other planets in my chart pretty strongly. So yeah, I happen to have an uncanny ability, to attract very argumentative people, or I just bring out the argumentative side of them. And so, needless to say, I also have an uncanny ability to dunk on others and to talk shit, even when I don't intend to. Now, on to the next Decan of Gemini, and for those of you that haven't seen my other Decan videos, the decans of each sign work as such. You go from 0 degrees leading up to 10 degrees of the sign for the first decan. So if you're mathematically inclined and wish to speak mathematically, It is the limit as the degree approaches 10 degrees. So everything up to 9 degrees and 59 minutes and however many seconds, that is the first decan. The second decan goes from 10 degrees to 19 degrees and however many minutes and seconds. And then the third decan goes all the way from 20 degrees Gemini to up to the start of Cancer. So, yeah, that's the very last decan of Gemini. Now, on to the Venusian decan. That's the decan of Libra. Gemini has to do with communication, and Libra has to do with fairness and beauty. So this could include something such as speaking in a beautiful manner, speaking in a way that people like. People like the way you talk. People find what you say to be interesting, to be appealing. You may not always speak in the most logical manner, but the way you speak is, it gets their emotions. Libra has to do with Venus. Also, Libra has to do with fairness. You value what's fair and right in the world. And when I say you, I mean Libra. You see that Gemini deception, how I kind of misled you there. Because depending on how you interpret this, well, it can mean two different things. So, Gemini and Libra, that has to do with speaking fairness, wanting to give the other person a chance to speak, not lying. Gemini doesn't necessarily have to be a liar, because anyone who has worth and knows the rules of the game knows that lying can and will backfire massive, big time. The few exceptions are there, and the main one is if you are under duress or you are being forced or pressured into saying something that is not true. In that case, it can be a little more complicated than that, and someone else might take part of the fall, but you will also take part of the fall because, well, you said it. Now, on to the third decan of Gemini, that has to do with Aquarius. So Aquarius is traditionally ruled by Saturn, and its modern co-ruler is Uranus. Aquarius has to do with, well, that's fixed air. So Aquarius has to do with math, science, innovation. So, you're speaking in an innovative manner. You're, speaking truth to power. You're speaking new ideas and communicating them. Also, Gemini and Aquarius could have to do with commerce in regards to new technology or something that is controversial, however, could have positive benefits. Aquarius is very communal. Aquarius can also be very, very caring and empathetic, although Aquarius doesn't really show it that well. And I got a notification, so I'm going to turn on Do Not Disturb mode. I apologize for the interruption. However, well, there's Gemini again. Interruptions, that has to do with Gemini. Now, all of them can be interrupted. However, the first and third decan of Gemini tend to be more similar and may stand out more, given that Venus has that appealing nature to her. Venus has to do with the senses. Venus has to do with emotion. Whereas, Saturn has to do with the cold hard facts. Uranus has to do with, innovation, new ideas, being unconventional. Uranus can be challenged and is challenging to the system of Saturn, the old traditions that may or may not be working anymore. They gotta go. Everything has to go. Everything has their ebbs and flows and their cycles. And so that'll be it for this video and this installment on the Decans of Gemini or Gemini, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And that'll be it. Next one we'll be doing is Saturn. Take care.